Hi everyone, my name is Ruth and welcome to the Bakuba Kingdom sample series where I break down the looks from my collection and the behind the scenes of how I create each look. I'm going to be taking you guys through my inspiration, the adjustments that I've had to make to samples, fittings, everything of that nature. So if this is something that you're interested in, make sure to stay tuned and follow me along on this journey. But without further ado, let's get into the video.
Rujembe Studios is a clothing brand on a mission to solve two of fashion's most pressing challenges: waste generated on the cutting floor and the lack of authentic representation of Black stories, voices, and creativity. We aim to do this through our holistic approach to fashion, commitment to sustainability, and the exploration of all 54 countries in Africa.
When I first started ideating the individual pieces from the collection, I wanted to merge London with the Bakuba. Obviously, being born in London, living here, growing up here, being exposed to London life, the environment, the scene, I really wanted to stay true to me in that sense, but then also merging it with the Bakuba, their story, their journey, their garment production, whilst also still maintaining the brand's sustainability goals. So when you look at the images of the Bakuba men, you will notice that they are topless majority, if not all of the time. Unfortunately, UK weather does not accommodate this kind of dressing, so I had to ask myself, what's the next best thing? What is considered second skin in menswear? And that's when the idea of a zero-waist t-shirt came to mind. So to begin my idea of a zero-waist t-shirt, in order to help visualize the concept, I used Adobe Illustrator. While studying fashion design at university, the closest thing to low waist or zero waist that I was taught was a kimono silhouette or a dolman sleeve. And funnily enough, what's so crazy now in hindsight is that during my final year of university, we actually did a module on zero waist pattern cutting. Well, we did a module on zero waist and we had to choose what technique of zero waist we wanted to adapt into our garment at the time. So this is definitely a full circle moment for sure. So using that information and also some of the little things that I had picked up on whilst studying, I used that knowledge to then try and formulate a zero waist pattern. Here is the initial sketch of the idea I had in mind. As you can see from the pattern, unfortunately, there is still waste being produced. I tried to challenge this by suggesting that the extra fabric that remained I could try and use it as an additional piece on the sleeve. However, this wasn't an ideal idea for me because when it comes to just silhouette overall, I tend to lean more on the side of just keeping the lines very much clean and simple. But like I said, I was kind of just experimenting, trying to see how I could make this t-shirt pattern fully zero waist. I also cut my fabric and my patterns on a fold. That way it would save me time cutting, but also allow for a more symmetrical cut each time. With the waist produced from the neckline, I decided that I was going to use that excess fabric as a neck facing. Funnily enough, again, I've been looking at the recent construction of t-shirts and I've noticed that this is definitely something that is being adopted in the fashion industry today. I'm not sure if it's because t-shirts are becoming zero waist in the pattern cutting process, or manufacturers are just realizing that more needs to be done to stabilize the neckline on stretch pieces, materials, garments. So by having a neck facing, it also allows for my t-shirt design to last longer over time, especially, like I said, it's made from stretch fabric. So the likelihood of it stretching over time, if not stabilized well enough, is very high. So having a neck facing definitely helps to mitigate that issue, adding to the element of craftsmanship, longevity of product, all the sustainability goals that I expect or I want from this brand. Once I attached the neck facing to the back bodice, I then joined the back and the front bodices together using my overlocker machine. It is recommended that you use a 3-thread overlock stitch on stretch materials, so that's exactly what I did. Here are the results. As you can see, it's not the most flattering in terms of shape. First thing I wanted to change was the width of the neckline. In my opinion, it is too wide, and there is a high probability that over time it will stretch. So like I said earlier, I'm trying to mitigate that issue as much as possible. And just from a personal preference, I do not like wide necklines on t-shirts. That is one of the reasons why I tend to avoid women's t-shirts, because I feel like they do make the neckline quite wide, which is understandable. Maybe they're taking into consideration the bust and just a woman's physique as a whole. But as for me, I do not like that look. So I did not want that with my own t-shirt for my brand. As this is a zero waist pattern, the width of the neckline is also the width of the neck facing. And that's another thing I just want to touch upon. Zero waist pattern cutting is not for the weak, because it's not as if you can have one pattern piece and you can make an adjustment to that. Every adjustment you make to one area has to be done to another. So it does take a lot of time, and it does take a lot of mental, mathematical strength in order to conquer. But we're getting somewhere. That's the most important thing. The width of the neckline is also the width of the neck facing. So upon inspection, I also decided that, you know what, yeah, the neck facing is also too wide for the bodice. So both patterns needed to be adjusted to a size, to a width that I felt comfortable with. The second thing that I noticed was that the armpit was too tight. So I had to figure out a way to drop it. The third thing I wanted to change was the seam running down the sleeve. Again, I just don't feel like it looks clean. It doesn't look chic. And typically on your t-shirts anyway, because the sleeve is added on later, you do not have a seam running down the side of your sleeve. So I didn't want that for this either. I was, however, happy with the length of the bodices, so I kept that. However, I had to keep in mind that it had not been hemmed yet. So there could be adjustments that needed to be done in the future. But yeah, guys, that's it for part 1. Hopefully you guys understand where I'm going with this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in part 2. Bye.